Well, we have a 7-month season ahead of us, which means there's plenty of time to grind for all the new weapons in Season of the Wish. Luckily, there's some pretty good stuff to chase, and a few of them are actually pretty great and definitely worth hunting for. So here's my list of the best ones to collect for both PvE and PvP. Let's start with the new seasonal weapons. Appetence is a stasis adaptive frame trace rifle, which is actually a first of its kind. Trace rifles may not be super meta, but they are pretty fun and they can be very effective with the right build. I'd be keeping an eye out for overflow in the left column, which can keep that magazine topped off beyond the normal capacity. This pairs really naturally with killing tally, which buffs up your damage with kills until you manually reload or you swap off of it. In the same way, demolitionist can help you reload without actually reloading, just throw a grenade out there and then keep that damage buff flowing. Otherwise, headstone is great on any stasis build. Attrition orbs is kind of interesting for making extra orbs of power, and one for all is pretty easy to proc with a fast rate of fire on a trace rifle. Scatter signal is a new rapid fire frame fusion rifle of the strand variety. Rapid fires are pretty solid in both PvE and PvP these days, and having a strand option now is really cool. For PvE, overflow once again is always a solid choice. If you have a good strand build to pair this fusion with, I think Slice is pretty interesting, especially on a hunter or a titan where you can cast your class ability pretty often. In the right column, controlled burst is pretty easy to proc in PvE against those bigger targets, and it can buff up your damage. For PvP, I'd defer to my friend Lego, who's much better with fusion rifles than I am. He made a great video breaking down his favorite roles. Personally, I'd probably be crafting one with perpetual motion and kickstart. Supercluster is a new strand slug shotgun with some pretty cool perks. I've always had an affinity for slugs in both PvP and PvE, so I was really excited to see this one in the loot pool. For PvE in the left column, I'd be looking for lead from gold, 4th times the charm, and reconstruction to help out with the ammo situation, or slice is kind of interesting too with the right build to sever targets. In the right column, look for vorpal weapon, surrounded, or cascade point, which I think is the first of its kind on a slug shotgun. For PvP, this shotty has a few fantastic perks that make it definitely worth a try if you're into precision with slugs. Slide shot is a natural pick for reloading with a slide and getting a small range boost, but I also wouldn't sleep on threat detector, which is fantastic on any shotgun. For the right column, I think fragile focus is the most obvious choice for the big range boost. Doomed Petitioner is an aggressive frame linear fusion rifle of the void element type. We've seen a few solid void options before, but this one brings some really interesting perk combos to the table. Envious Assassin and Reconstruction can buff up your magazine size, which is always great on an LFR. Precision Instrument increases crit damage after just dealing any kind of sustained damage at all, which is really nice for a precision boss type DPS weapon. And both Surrounded and Golden Tricorn can also give you a damage buff if you're able to meet the requirements, which could be a little bit situational depending on the fight. It also has High Ground, which can be an interesting way to eke out a little bit of extra damage depending on how the boss room is set up. Next up, we have a candidate for a very annoying gun. Well, it's actually not a gun at all, it's a bow, and it has a very special perk which we have yet to see. It's not a new perk, but it's never been on a bow before. I'm talking about Disruption Break on the new Lethophobia. It's a void lightweight frame bow, and you can do something quite interesting with it. You can break someone's shields in PvP with just one headshot and then clean it up with a single 140 RPM hand cannon body shot thanks to the debuff. Even if you didn't hit that follow-up shot, you'll leave your opponent very vulnerable to any kind of kinetic damage. Your teammates will thank you, and your opponents will likely hate you. The lightweight frames come with an excellent draw speed, which can be buffed up yet again by the intrinsic perk, allowing you to shell out a lot of debuffing arrows very quickly. The trade-off for that is a quite bad accuracy stat and limited range, but I guess it would be too broken if you could use Disruption Break on a precision bow. And this bow swapping combo works maybe a bit too effectively with our next weapon. Before we move over to the dungeon weapons, I have to quickly talk about Thorn. I've basically mentioned in every single hand cannon tier list I've made for years now that once Thorn finally receives a catalyst that buffs up the range, it would be a serious contender for the top of the meta. And sure enough, the new Thorn catalyst this season has made it the #1 weapon in all of PvP. The new catalyst gives bonus range and stability at base, which already makes Thorn a competitive option at the top of the hand cannon totem pole. But then it also buffs up the range even further whenever you pick up one of those remnants, as well as buffing up your mobility and handling. It makes the already strong Thorn perhaps the best hand cannon in Destiny. I've been using it a ton across the PvP modes, and it's been really fun to use so far, albeit maybe a bit too strong. I guess we'll see how we feel about it in a few months. We might almost have a Destiny 1 Year 1 problem on our hands. Regardless, if you haven't completed the catalyst yet, I highly recommend giving it a try in both PvE and PvP. It went from a weapon that I was feeling kind of mediocre about to one of my absolute favorite weapons in the game almost overnight. By the way, if you need some extra help landing those Thorn shots to get the damage flowing, you might want to try out a new mousepad. I created the Ember Edge KX100 pad after trying basically every top mouse pad on the market a couple of years ago and combining my favorite parts of each one into a super pad. Ever since I've switched to this pad, I've been consistently getting higher scores in my aim training scenarios and hitting some really fun clips in every FPS game that I play. Tons of Destiny content creators have switched over to using our pad, and it's been awesome to see all of the great reviews flowing in this year. We're doing a holiday sale until the end of the month, so if you want to try one out, you can save $5 by going to emberedge.com and using promo code HOLIDAY. This next one is only going to be around for a short time, so get it fast if you're into fusions. Glacioclasm is a void high impact fusion with some new perks that make it scary good in PvP. Successful warm up on a near 100 range fusion is insane. That's almost rapid fire charge speeds after the initial kill. Pair that with full bore or extended barrel, projection fuse, and a charge time masterwork setup and you'll be vaporizing enemies in the Crucible all day long. To go along with successful warm up, I'd be looking for under pressure, killing wind, or heating up. They're all fantastic choices. I want to once again shout out my friend Lego who pointed me towards this role. It's clearly a beast and you can see the carnage in his video. It's not meta defining in PvE, but it does have some good options there as well. I'd be looking for overflow with either reservoir burst or a controlled burst. Alternatively, a roll of repulsor brace and controlled burst is kinda cool for a mix of ad clear, protection, and boss damage. This works especially well if you run it with Gear Falcons, which is my favorite PvE hunter exotic. Okay, we have to talk about the new rocket sidearm. Indebted Kindness is a new arc sidearm that shoots rockets instead of the normal sidearm bullets. It's pretty cool and definitely the first of its kind in Destiny. This is by far one of the most interesting non-exotic weapons added to Destiny in ages, and it's really cool to see them being open to experimenting with some more unique weapon ideas. Perks wise for PvE, I'd be looking for beacon rounds, which might help you a bit with landing those hits with the projectiles. Impulse Amplifier can also be good to speed up their velocity, and it's hard to go wrong with lead from gold anytime you're using a weapon that might be running dry on special ammo. Volt Shot is amazing on basically any arc weapon, and the extra damage offered from Adagio or Surrounded could be nice depending on the tankiness of the enemies. We've got another interesting bow on the list, and this one is a precision frame in the kinetic slot. We haven't had too many options in the slot for the longest time. There was the Garden Bow Accrued Redemption, Biting Winds from Europa, and the Raconteur. Accrued Redemption has very outdated perks, so it's not really that interesting anymore. Biting Winds has some more modern perks, but it's lacking Archer's Tempo or any other good way to boost that draw speed. Raconteur was kind of the first time we got a serious precision bow in the kinetic slot, and now we've got another one, the Vengeful Whisper. It's of the strain variety, and that immediately makes me excited for some of the potential hatchling builds out there. Bows deal a lot of damage, and they have huge aim assist cones, so it's very easy to hit headshots and then get those hatchlings out on the field to help you fight. At the same time, you'll be proccing Archer's Tempo, which lets you shoot even faster. Or you could always go for the other strain perk in the left column called Slice. It makes your shots sever targets after using your class ability for some extra strand synergy. For PvP, you could think about going for hipfire grip in the left column because bows do have excellent hipfire accuracy, which is definitely worth doubling down on. Otherwise, the tried and true Archer's Tempo with successful warm-up is always a great combo. Crux Termination is a new arc rocket launcher in the aggressive frame family. There's one specific reason that I wanted to mention this thing, and that's because it's the first rocket launcher we've ever seen with slide shot. I'm kind of impressed that our Guardians can somehow manage to reload a rocket launcher while sliding, but however they manage to do it, it could potentially be a very interesting way to play. Outside of slide shot, it also has Clown Cartridge, Reconstruction, and Envious Assassin as other ways to avoid reloading as much as possible. I'm not sure if the trade-off of going for bipod is worth it yet, maybe some of you PvE experts can fill us in, but Explosive Light is always useful on rockets. Speaking of rocket launchers, we have the return of one of the most memorable rockets from Destiny 1, Dragon's Breath. This thing is really fun with the catalyst. It's almost like having Witherhoard in the heavy slot, but one that paints the entire map with pools of solar energy. It's especially fun in a season with so many great ways to buff up solar weapons from the artifact. I know some people complain when Bungie brings back old weapons, and I can see the argument there, but in this case, I was pretty happy to see Dragon's Breath return in an interesting way because I always thought it was a pretty cool weapon in D1. I know basically the last thing that we need is yet another rapid fire pulse rifle in the arc flavor, but I have to admit I've been really enjoying using Scalar Potential so far. It was the first new weapon that I got this season and it feels really good to shoot. I'm not too amazed by the perks on display here, but Keep Away is great for any PvP weapon, and it has a few good options in the right column like Golden Tricorn that can be used for some interesting builds. Plus it has Headseeker and Focus Fury that can help with getting some easier kills. It's not going to take over the meta by any means, but I have enjoyed my time testing it so far, and I've always liked the weapon model of Cold Denial, which this one basically copies exactly. Okay, I've never been one to get overly excited about any high impact auto rifle. I've just really never been a fan of how they feel. I must admit though, Lethal Abundance from Iron Banner this season is one of the best feeling high impact autos that I've ever used. It has amazing range and some great perks like keep away, tap the trigger, and target lock. Onslaught can also increase the rate of fire after a kill, which is really nice on these lower rate of fire auto rifles. I still don't think that the 360 RPM autos make all that much sense to use since missing shots is so punishing, and yet they don't have the strengths of a hand cannon or a pulse rifle for peak shotting, but if you're looking for a good one to try, I'd definitely give a shot to Lethal Abundance. The main weapon from Trials I'm looking at this season is the Incisor, which is a new strand trace rifle. As I'm making this video, it's getting some really good praise from friends of mine in PvP, but I haven't had much time to experiment with it yet myself. It has some really great PvP perks available like dynamic sway reduction, perpetual motion, and Zen moment over in the left column. I'm also really interested to see what builds people come up with that utilize slice. And personally, I would love to try an offhand strike roll because I love hip firing weapons in PvP and it could be such a fun way to play a trace rifle. In the right column, target lock is immediately interesting, but I'm not sure how the TTK changes quite yet. Tap the trigger is excellent and kill clip could be deadly if you get enough ammo and reserves to reload, but that's often a pretty big problem for trace rifles in PvP, so I'm not sure how useful that would be in practice. I'm also really curious to try killing tally, but again, the ammo economy with trace rifles in PvP might make this one a bit hard to get a lot of consistent benefit from. I have a somewhat love-hate relationship with Bungie. Look, they just added a new pulse rifle to the game and it's absolutely awesome. It's an aggressive frame, meaning it can shoot 4 bullets at a time and can 2-burst opponents for a blazing fast time to kill, while also having some of the craziest PvP perks ever seen on a pulse rifle. But unfortunately, it's gated behind the competitive playlist and you can only get a couple of drops of it per week. If you're unlucky, you might never see a good roll on it despite grinding out all of your chances. Though as luck would have it, streamer luck hit once again and I did manage to get my hands on a really great roll for PvP. This one has 100 range and almost 100 recoil direction, so it really feels like a laser beam. Headseeker is really great for that extra accuracy and leniency, and rapid hit is just awesome for that huge stability boost after landing a bunch of headshots. Mind you, this is a 4-burst pulse rifle, so landing just 1 burst already procs 4 stacks of rapid hit. There's a lot of good alternatives here too. Zen moment is a great choice on pulse rifles, and kill clip is always great for those follow-up fights. Plus it has a really clean reticle. I love that little X shape. I just wish it had a little bit less zoom so it didn't feel so much like a telescope sitting on top of my rifle. Okay, neither of these last 2 weapons are new, but if you missed out on getting a solid roll for either Rose or Mercurial Overreach, these are finally focusable this season and it's definitely worth going for a god roll if you ever see yourself playing some PvP in this game. Both of these are S tier in their respective categories and have a ton of great perks without too many stinkers, which makes getting a solid roll pretty easy to do. The weekly lockout for how many engrams we can focus is kind of annoying, but at least getting a higher rank provides more chances at a roll, which gives us some reason to keep playing competitive PvP in this game. I'll be spending all of my engrams trying to finally get the perfect Rose. Be sure to check out our Ember Edge holiday sale if you're interested in a new mousepad for your gaming setup or as a gift for a friend. And up next, check out the video I just made about improving your aim in Destiny 2. It's great for both controller and mouse and keyboard players, and I promise if you follow these tips, you'll develop some of the best aim in your life for FPS games. It's linked on screen and in the description.